Traveling to a foreign country is supposed to be a pleasant and exciting experience. But for some Chinese tourists who plan to visit the UK, things can get complicated and annoying when it comes to visa application. Things are certainly not easier for students and professionals coming from this growing economy which brings the UK the biggest spenders. Before being granted a visa, a Chinese citizen has to fill out forms in English and present themselves at a consulate. They are fingerprinted and interrogated about their life, wealth, and prospects. As part of this process, some applicants are denied visas, but a greater number give up because the process is too burdensome or takes too long. In Trafalgar Square, I met a few Chinese visitors, tourists and people who came to visit their families as well. Though they managed to get a visa, either by themselves or with the help of an agency, they didn't find the process satisfactory.
I remember I paid about 70 or 80 pounds for the visa. I don't know where the money was going. Also, it takes a long time to get it, at least 15 working days, and they ask for a lot of documents.
I waited for about 1 or 2 months. I applied through an agency. I could have done it by myself. It would be a lot cheaper, but the whole process was just too complicated.
The website is so bad and really not comfortable to use. So it took me quite a long time to fill in the form online, and it was a bit annoying because everything has to be translated. After about 15 working days, you will get the visa.
These people are coming from a large growing market of the UK's tourism industry, which currently contributes more to the economy than the banking system, according to Robert Maitland, tourism professor at the University of Westminster.
Well, the tourism industry is a really big part of the UK economy now, and some people see it as overtaking the banking and financial services because there is this large and growing market amongst rapidly developing economies like China and like Brazil, and all the evidence we have is as people become better off, they like to travel, and there are many interesting places in the world, but Britain generally and perhaps London particularly is certainly one of those. It's a destination that is very well known and people are keen to come here.
So in order to deliver economic growth, it is important that Chinese visitors are able to come easily to the UK. But now the obstacles and difficulties for applying a visa are still quite common. Head of Tour Operator Relations from European Tour Operators Association, Nick Greenfield.
The big problems are you've got to put yourselves in the mindset of someone travelling from China to Europe. The beauty of Schengen is you have 26 countries for one visa. Whereas with the UK, you're looking at one, in fact 2 countries because of an agreement with Ireland, and it's not going to appeal as much. The other thing, very physical manifestation, is currently, depending on the format, the UK form is up to 10 pages long. The Schengen form, when you print it out, is 2 or 3 pages long, and currently is also to be filled in English. Some of this also just comes because of people being confused at times about what should be provided. If you read the guidance notes, there's a lot of should and could in there rather than just a clear list of what you need to provide.
For those people who know little English, filling the application forms is not an easy thing. And the fact is that a large number of Chinese parents who have sent their children to the UK to study can't understand English at all. As Mr. Yang, whose daughter is now studying in the UK, complains on the phone.
I'm going to visit my daughter during the holiday. To apply the visa, first of all, I have to fill 10 pages of application forms. Since I know little English, I decided to apply through an agency. I was told by one of them that it costs about £500. That was just too expensive. Then some questions sound odd because they are not related whatsoever to visiting family abroad. I can only make some arrangement, like where to stay and what place to travel, after I see my daughter. So I think it's almost impossible for me to submit all these details as required before I go, and the waiting time is quite long, about 2 to 3 weeks.
As what Mr. Yang just said, there are some questions in the forms that people have felt odd or confused. This kind of feeling is also shared by researchers who have done visa studies. Nick Greenfield from the European Tour Operators Association.
What the UK's done is they've sort of copied, I don't know which came first, to be honest with you. The US approach used to be on all waiver visa forms, which was to ask questions that people sometimes were confused about, are you a terrorist? Yes, no. Were you involved in the Second World War? Yes, no. These sort of questions. And there is actually a question on the current UK visa form, which is along the lines of, I paraphrase here, have you engaged in any other activities that would lead you to question your moral worth? So basically, even I reading that don't understand exactly what they're asking. I mean, I guess they're saying, have you done anything else which is bad and would therefore make you think that you shouldn't come to the UK? Now, I understand that when we talk about visas, we're talking about security and so forth, but we're very concerned that we must also remember we're also talking about visitors. You know, our current motto is Great Britain, you're welcome.
You're intrigued. You're invigorated.
You're invited.
You're intrepid. You're inspired.
You're invited.
Great Britain, you are welcome. But it seems that the welcome message is sometimes forgotten, as in the case of Miss Mao, a senior television producer who applied for the visa as a visiting scholar 2 years ago, but was then denied twice. I talked to Miss Mao over the phone, and it seems that now, 2 years later, she's still upset about it.
When I applied for the visa, I didn't expect it would be any problem, because before that, I have traveled to many countries and never encountered a problem. And I was so astonished to find that I was declined. I have to write an email to the visa officer, explain the whole situation. And 3 weeks later, I got a pretty even rude letter saying he has every reason to think that I intend to stay permanently in the United Kingdom. This is really ridiculous. And what makes me finally give up is that the second letter. The letter is so rude. And it turned out that I don't think the people there welcome me. So why bother?
It seems Britain's current visa policy to Chinese citizens is closing the door to professionals and graduates who wish to contribute to the UK's economy by offering their knowledge and skills. But for the government, the prime concern is to cut net immigration and keep the borders safe. Home Office ministers have constantly argued that UK businesses are addicted to immigration and should look to domestic workforce rather than pursuing talent abroad. In the 2011 immigration speech, Prime Minister David Cameron said,
I want Britain to continue to attract the best workers, but it cannot be right that people coming to fill short-term skills gaps can stay long-term. As the cross-party balanced migration group has argued, it's essential that we break the link between temporary visas and permanent settlement.
As part of the government measures to break this link and to crack down visa abuse, the popular post-study work visa, which allowed students 2 years after graduation to seek employment, was closed last April. Home Secretary Theresa May told last December in a public speech that the Home Office was determined to make the immigration system work in the national interest, i.e. to cut immigration. Since they believed a large number of foreign students are not temporary visitors as they should be, the post-study work visa had to be closed.
With work visas, if you have the skills we need and a proper job offer, you can come to Britain. If you have an investment or a business idea to bring here, you can come to Britain. But we don't need any more unskilled immigration, and we're closing down the routes, both formal and informal, for unskilled workers to come to Britain.
As a result, it is now much more difficult for students coming from outside the EU to find a job, because they now need a proper sponsorship to prove that they are indeed skilled workers. Ms. Zhai, a Chinese student who came to study for a master's degree 3 years ago, got the post-study work visa before it was cancelled. Looking back at her experience, this is what she had to say.
I started to look for a job in the media industry, which is what I was interested in. I interned for some TV stations. I freelanced for them for quite a long time. If you want to work for example, NGOs or media, or even consulting company, it's very difficult to get a visa. If there are more options for European citizens, there's no reason for them to recruit non-Europeans, which they have to pay more. So sometimes I think you have to give up the thing that you are interested in order to stay in this place. But in the long term, it's not definitely negative, because you get to learn something different, and you get to discover more about what you might be good at.
Ms. Zhai told me that she was still trying hard to look for a job that could sponsor her for a work visa, because her post-study visa would be expired in a few months' time. Just like her, Chinese students, as the largest group of overseas students in the UK, are probably the most affected by the closure of post-study visa. The Confederation of British Industry and London Mayor Boris Johnson had both criticized the government's target to slash net immigration last year. Boris Johnson said that the visa policies were preventing the city and the universities from recruiting the brightest talent and were a block to growth. The European Tour Operators Association agreed, and it is now working to push for improvements.
We will continue to argue if you are holding these processes up because you say it helps our security or helps keep our borders safe or controls immigration, all these things, fine, but are you going about it the right way? Even the members of the general public listening to this, I would plead for them to get that balance in their head between the security and the immigration issue, and making sure that we're seen as a welcoming place to come.